Kid's letters bring the Wild West to life. Imagine actual letters written by Billy the Kid. His hand scrawling in old-style ink, telling us a story about the past that you can find nowhere else. There are hardly two more famous New Mexicans than General Lew Wallace, territorial governor of New Mexico, famed literary figure, the author of Ben-Hur, and Billy the Kid, AKA William H. Bonney. And one of the most fascinating tales in all of New Mexico history, of course, is the connection between this outlaw youth and the patrician governor from the East, the great literary figure, and their connection with the Lincoln County War and the wildest of the wild days in territorial New Mexico. Lew Wallace had been appointed governor of New Mexico by President Hayes to clean up New Mexico after the corruption that had led to the famous Lincoln County War. The war was essentially over, but there was still widespread violence in Lincoln County. Lew Wallace was determined to end that violence. To do so, he needed to bring indictments against several of the key players. Billy the Kid was to assist him in this. And in exchange for the kid's testimony before the grand jury, Wallace promised him a pardon. In the archives of the New Mexico History Museum reside two precious letters from Billy the Kid to Governor Lew Wallace. One is Billy setting out what he can give to the governor in exchange for a pardon for his crimes during the Lincoln County War. He's willing to testify for the state in the recent murder of a lawyer on the streets of Lincoln. The second letter is written after Billy has been captured by Pat Garrett and he's being held for trial in the Santa Fe jail, chained to the floor. He writes to the governor to remind him that they had a deal and that the governor had made a pledge of a pardon for Billy the Kid. Billy had lived up to his part of the bargain. Now it was time for the governor to live up to his. The bottom line is, Billy the Kid lived up to his part of the bargain, testifying at the risk of his own life. Wallace refused to live up to his part of the bargain. A lot of this came from a sense of contempt Wallace had for even participating in this unseemly business. He hated being in New Mexico. He hated having to go down to Lincoln. There's a wonderful letter he writes his wife complaining about how the minstrels of the city are serenading this little specimen, he calls him, the kid, in his jail cell. He couldn't wait to get out of New Mexico, and in fact the novel he's writing, which he was obsessed with, Ben-Hur, was going to be his ticket out, and indeed it was. The new president, James Garfield, gave him an appointment as the minister to Constantinople, and off he went, and he couldn't wait to get out. He wrote Wallace 3 letters from the Santa Fe jail, begging him to come and see him so they could talk. Wallace wouldn't even walk down the street and see the kid. One of the ironies of history is who it decides is going to be famous. History has a life of its own. In 1880 New Mexico, no one would have dreamed that Lew Wallace, Civil War hero, territorial governor, famous author, would be, for the most part, a footnote in history. While this young outlaw that he was forced to deal with would be one of the most famous characters in all of American history, if not world history, certainly the outlaw of our dreams, the persistent rebel, the one who rides free forever across the wild, wild West that fuels all of our fantasies about the past here in New Mexico.